If there's one thing that you take away from listening to today's podcast, it's I want you to think about how you think about success. In other words, are you sure you're measuring success in your own life in the way you want to be measuring it? And is your definition of how you are, quote unquote, winning in life or living your best life, is that based on your own rules or someone else's rules, or is it society's rules? And is it something that's based off of what everyone around you expects out of you, or is it really based on what makes you happy and what you expect out of yourself? Welcome to another episode of Everyday Badassery. I'm your host, Christine Lozada. This is a podcast meant to inspire you to be just 1% more badass today than you were yesterday. Life is all about those small moments. It's how we get to our big badass moments in life. And I recently just got back from a trip to somewhere I used to live, which is Manhattan, New York City. And it really made me reflect on some of the huge badass changes and decisions I've made in my life to get to the point I'm at today. And while I was there, I could not stop thinking about the rat race. And I feel like we all know what the rat race is, but just for a second, think for yourself, like, how do you define the rat race? And do you feel like you are playing in the rat race? Because when I used to live in Manhattan, which was in the years 2011 to 2015, I was there for exactly 4 years. I 100% was competing in that rat race. And the way I define the rat race is hold on. So I used to love watching MMA. I still love watching MMA. I'm a big UFC fan. When I was a little kid, before they had rules, before they had weight classes, my dad and I used to sit on the living room floor on the carpet and watch UFC. And it was basically like one rule. It was like no crotch shots and no shots to the eyeballs. And that was about it. Anyway, that was a caveat. Let's talk about what the rat race would be like if it was like, in this corner, Christine Lozada, like weighing in at, but the rat race rules would be like, job title is, job salary at, what she owns is, and like fill in the blank, right? It's all this status stuff. And then it would be like the accolades, graduating from, at the top of her class, she knows. And then like it would go into like, who I know, like, used to be married rich, ex-husband, lived across the street from the Kardashians, Ivy League graduate, MBA, brother-in-law, pro skater, like, right? It would go through like all this like weird status stuff. And it's like, that's what I think of when I think of the rat race. Because when I lived in New York City, it was all about like who you knew, what you did, and like what it was about you that made you better than everyone else. And it was a super duper miserable way to live, if I am completely honest. And I didn't really realize how bad it was until I stepped away from it for almost 10 years I've been away from that. Thank goodness. All right. So let me quickly paint a picture for you on what my life used to look like in New York City, because I purposely wanted to move there, not right after college. I wanted to move there when I was making a buck so that I could enjoy that city for what it offered. I didn't want to be broke in New York City. I wanted to be breaking the bank because I was spending money enjoying the crap out of that city. And so when I first moved there, and this is after I had decided to just give up my life in San Francisco, travel the world until I was completely over it, and then move there with no job lined up and like no friends and nothing. And I was like, this is a little risky. This is a little scary. But you know what? It's exactly where I want to be because I was ready at that time in my life, which was like my mid-ish 20s, to do something differently. And so when I got there, my first job was very Devil's Wears Prada. In other words, it was exactly like that movie. I was a consultant for Saks Fifth Avenue. And so I used to get dressed in my little skirt suit and go into Midtown to like the 75th floor of Saks Fifth Avenue in this like grandiose building in this beautiful like conference room where I would like give presentations and strategy conversations on what Saks Fifth Avenue should do from an e-commerce front. And so that was my job at that time. It paid extremely well. It was very judgmental. That job was people looking at me up and down every day, judging the brand of my skirt suit and I don't know what kind of fragrance I was wearing, which by the way, I have allergies. I hate wearing perfume. So that was kind of a difficult thing to do at that time because I definitely wore fragrance. If I could tell you which fragrance it was, I cannot remember. Anyway, that was my first job. My second job was working for a startup that got acquired by Amazon. It was a true startup in the sense that they did all the things. You come into the office and they have fresh, the best bagels of New York for you to have, followed by a boot camp class at 10 a.m. in the lobby so you don't have to leave to go out. And then lunch was served, and then they hopefully have you stay late because if you stay past 7 p.m., you get a $35 credit towards Seamless so you can have food delivered to the office. And if you stay after 10 p.m., then you can get a free Uber ride home. In other words, I was there all day long. Like just between these two jobs, right? Like super cushy. Oh, not only that, sorry, let me go back to the startup, the other things besides the workout and the food. There was sewing classes on the top floor overlooking Manhattan so that you could, fulfill your interests while you were at work and on your break. Like all the things, right? Like just imagine this list going on and on and on forever. It was a job that was very cushy, but it was a job in which my job was my life and I never left the office. I was just living there. And what I realized was as I was racing in this rat race, I was never living in the city. Yeah, I had my weekends where, I'd go absolutely crazy and, hit all the nightclubs and do brunch that started at noon and ended at 4 a.m. That was a very normal weekend for me. I did all those things, which was fun, but it didn't really feel like a fulfilling life at that time. And so I was reflecting on this as I was traveling back to New York City. I was there for 9 days, primarily for a travel conference, and then to stay on to reconnect with a lot of friends and just to enjoy the city that I absolutely love and I'm absolutely happy to not be living in anymore. That was an old me. But I was listening to a friend, and we were having some drinks at an old bar that I used to go to all the time. And he was talking about some of his problems. And no matter what your problem is, it's a valid problem, whatever it is. But as I was listening to him, I was like, wow, these are some for real first world people's problems. Like, I'm so sorry that the wine shelf that you recently bought happened to be $4,000, significantly more than you expected because you had to buy the restaurant grade because of the number of bottles that you needed to be putting on it, because some of those bottles were some of the top winemakers in Napa Valley, and you happen to have several cases of them, and you need to be able to store them somewhere nice. Like, wow, like that. It's hard for me to like, ooh, I feel really bad for you, right? Like, it's hard for me to feel really bad. And then it got to a point in which, I'm trying to be a good friend and I'm listening, I'm trying to be empathetic, and no one loves to pay taxes, right? No one's like, oh, yay, it's tax time, let me give you all my money. Like, it's not about that, right? He was complaining about taxes. And I looked at him and I said, to be honest, I don't like paying taxes, but I'm very happy to be living in this country and I'm happy to pay for it. Some of the things that I have seen from traveling in third world countries makes me thankful I have the opportunity to do something simple, like give money in exchange for the things that I get as a result of being in this country. And that, for some, there's plenty of people in the United States that do not own passports. And there are lots of people who may have passports, but have not yet had a chance to travel to a third world country. And I was, this isn't something I should laugh out about actually, but I spent the last hour before recording this podcast episode responding to hate comments. And I don't respond to all of them. And there are trolls out there. So in other words, the way I respond to these things are basically if it's something that is just hurtful and helps nobody, then I just delete it, and there's a button that I can push that's called hide user from channel, in that person can no longer see they can still see my channel, but anytime they respond, both myself and anybody else cannot see what they're putting out there. So it just kind of like quietly puts them in the corner, which is very convenient because then you don't have to deal with it anymore. So that's kind of one kind of portion of the hate comments. The other ones they might be like constructive criticism, or like, wow, that was not said nicely at all, but that's actually kind of helpful. So I might respond to some of those. And then there are others where it's like, well, I mean, honestly, if you're putting a hate comment on there, I mean, that's still engagement on my content. And so that's actually helping to push my content to more people. And so sometimes, like, especially if it's just a dumb comment, like, wow, I'm so sick and tired of seeing you in that bathing suit, I might just respond with like a, rock on emoji and like, glad you like to see this bathing suit, or like, I guess what you're going to see me in next time, because I own very few things. But I digress. So I was responding to hate comments right before this, but one of the hate comments I get a lot is how people tell me like, wow, you're so spoiled. Wow, you have no idea. You're clearly have no idea what it's like to, what the conditions are like in third world countries, or you have no idea what it's like for the people who are not rich. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Like, my parents were born in a third world country. My parents were born in the Philippines. I have traveled there, and I remember times when I was a child, I could not go with my father to visit some of my extended family because they did not have proper flooring. They had dirt floors, and they were embarrassed to have our whole family see their home. And so only my father could go. Or, I was lucky because eventually, because my grandfather, in the Philippines, you call your grandfather your lolo. My lolo was in the Navy, and so he had Navy money, so he was able to build a America-like home in the Philippines. But through his gate, people would come pick his grass and try to plant it in their own home gardens so that they could have grass and not just dirt. So like, these are things that are not uncommon to me. And, I used to go to the Philippines and I would see a family friend who had an orphanage. And I remember my first time in the Philippines going and meeting those kids that had just come in. And it was so heartbreaking and so exciting to see them starting a much better life than they would have had. And then years later, coming back, seeing that the orphanage was able to adopt a lot of them themselves, and coming back and those kids remembered me. And they were so excited to see me. Ooh, getting all the feels. Whew. All right, let's get back on topic. All right, so I've seen these things, right? And I don't expect people who are watching my channel to know these things about me, which is why when I read these hate comments, it's like, whatevs. Like, how are you supposed to know everything about me anyway? Like, there's just no way. You are not me. And so as I was having this conversation with a friend in New York City at this amazing bar, hearing about his first world problems, and I told him this comment again. I told him, I don't like paying taxes, but I am so happy and so thankful to be living in this country and to have the opportunity to have this exchange of a portion of my money to get all of the things that I get as a result of living in the United States. And when I say the things I get, I'm referring to, if something goes wrong and I call the police, they will help me. When I did that in some of the other countries I have traveled to, they are probably going to just steal a couple things from me and not help me with my problem at all. Or countries where I am completely dodging the police because they are not looking out for my safety at all. I have had a gun to my head I'm not going to name the country, but that was not a fun experience as they went through all of my belongings and took anything and everything that they wanted, which luckily at that time I was very young. I really didn't have that many things, nor did I have drones at that time. Otherwise, those would all be gone. All right, all those things to say, he was floored in that moment, and he looked at me, and he was just like, what do you mean? And I started sharing with him some of the stories that I've experienced in third world countries, because he's never been to one. And he was like, tell me more. He's like, tell me a story. Tell me a story about, what was your most eye-opening thing when you traveled to a third world country or abroad? And I told him this story, and I've shared this. If you have not checked out Sheb's podcast, Sheb's the Wanderer, I talk about this on his podcast as well. It's awesome. I will link it. I will link his show in the show notes below. And I told him about this time that I rode a bike. I rode a bike from Bangkok, Thailand to Siem Reap, Cambodia. This was not a short bike ride. You'd basically ride hours and hours and hours, something around it depends on how fast you were riding and how hot it was. You'd basically ride anywhere from 4 hours to 7 hours per day on a mountain bike, because these were not always roads. I was often riding through the shrimp farms or through the rice paddies or just down dirt roads that were completely empty, no tourists around at all. And during this bike ride, what was fascinating to me was, especially when I was in very, 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 very remote villages, the children would see you coming from afar and they would all run out to the street so that they could wave at you and yell hello, because they all knew that word. They would yell hello as you were riding by, and it would just be the most exciting thing for them to hear you yell hello back and wave. And it was this thing where there were always these kids out there, and there were a few times I had an opportunity to go into the homes. Whether it was, oh my gosh, this bike ride was oftentimes 90 degrees with 90% humidity. And so I would often stop for water, take a break, and you're in the middle of nowhere. So the kids would all be running around, or it's not running around, running out and then circling around you, and be so curious and looking at you. And they would all want you to come back to their homes. And so there were a couple times in which not that I would go hang out for hours or anything, but sometimes, the family would want you to come and just see their home, or say hello with them and welcome you to their space and to their country. And sometimes these homes would be in floating villages. And if you've never been to a floating village, it's really difficult to explain, but these houses are the size of, actually it's the size of my New York City shoebox. My first apartment in New York City was 400 square feet. No, that's not true. It was 465 square feet. Those 65 were a lot of extra feet. And so imagine these really small spaces, and most of them were actually even smaller than that. They would be the size of a small bedroom that could fit a queen size bed and maybe a desk. And that was the entire home for the family. And they would do everything there, sleep there, cook there, eat there, all the things. And it was floating along these rivers. And a lot of times, a lot of these homes would be all kind of strung together. And you kind of walk across these floating partitions, I guess, to get from place to place or home to home. And as you walk through some of them, and it's just like, wow, they are so exposed to the elements. Like, wow, they live off of these rivers, and these rivers are not clean. It's where they drink, it's where they bathe, it's where they throw their trash, it's where they get their fish from, it's where they live their lives. And I was explaining all of this to my friend, and he looked at me and he was like, and so they were all miserable. And I looked at him and I said, no, that was the thing. That was the biggest learning of my life, is these people who live very simply, who have almost nothing, were some of the happiest people I have ever met in my entire life to date. This was years ago. I took this trip right before I moved to New York City. I took this trip back in 2011. And, fast forward, I'm recording this now in February 2023. And these are still some of the happiest people I have ever met in my life. And my learning there was that, are these people living the rat race? No, they are defining happiness on their own terms. They have what they have to live a happy life. They are surrounded by their family and their friends, and they have love in their lives. They have the things to sustain them so that they can live freely. And they were just so happy to see a stranger and to share what they do have in that moment that I was passing through. And I am so blessed, and I'm so thankful to have had this experience and to see that. And I'm so thankful for the timing of that, because it was right before I moved to New York City. And it made me live those 4 years I lived in Manhattan very differently. Does that mean I never got caught up in the rat race? No, I absolutely got caught up in all of that. But I would always remember those moments on that bike ride as I was thinking about, do I need this stupid handbag that has, the label on it? Or do I need this fill in the blank watch, fill in the blank hairstyle, fill in the blank clothing, all the things, right, that demonstrate your status in New York City. And so I was very conscious of that, and it helped me to live a much better life there than I otherwise would have if I got completely sucked in. And so when I fast forward, now I don't live that life anymore. I have completely given up the city life. I love to visit. And when I was on this last trip, I couldn't stop being thankful that I don't live in a city anymore. That chapter of my life was fantastic, but that chapter of my life is over. And I have moved on to a different time of my life. And so I want you to ask yourself and just take a pause for a moment. And actually, by the way, taking a pause, if you are getting some value out of this podcast, please leave a positive review. It really does help to distribute this to more people. And please connect with me. I'm at Christine Lozada everywhere. I would love to know if any of this resonated with you. And don't forget about your free badassery journal. Do not leave the scene of learning something without taking action. And that free journal is available for you to write down what you learn as you go through this podcast series. But fast forward to now, and I gave up that city life, and I gave up that corporate life. I made that big jump to go into the life I live now, which is a life of travel and adventure, a lot of travel and a crap load of adventure. And you know what? I'm not going to pretend I have no problems. That's not true. We all have problems, whether it's your wine case with your exclusive Napa Valley wines that don't fit on it. We all have problems, right? And actually, in the spirit of transparency, let's talk about some of the problems I have now. I recently, while I was in New York City, I went to a travel conference. And at that travel conference, which I posted about a lot and very transparently on social media, International Media Marketplace. This is not a travel conference to go and learn about how to be a creator and improve your craft. It is a conference about business. You sit down with the top tourism boards, marketing organizations, and PR people in travel from around the world, and you figure out how to get paid and find press trips to figure out like what content you're making, the stories you're telling, and where you're traveling to for 2023. And so when I think about the problems that I have, here's a perfect example. It is, and I'm fortunate to be able to say this problem. It is easy to travel for free. It is easy in my line of work as a creator to find places who are happy to host you, and you can travel for free in exchange for all the things and the hard work you do to put out content about those destinations. It is very common. But free travel does not pay the bills, right? And so finding travel in which you are paid for your content, you are paid to travel, is a lot more difficult. Is it impossible? Absolutely not. Is it a lot more work to find those types of things? Absolutely. And so an example of a problem I have today is, yes, I can travel until my eyeballs fall out, which in 2022 they kind of did, and I lost a lot of hair and I burned out really hard. You all know that. I podcasted about that. You can find that in a recent episode about talking about my burnout from that. But a problem I have is finding opportunities consistently in which they are paying me to travel. Another problem I have, right, as a result of being seen by, let's see, what am I averaging right now? I'm averaging somewhere around 250,000 people seeing my content per month. I think that's accurate. It might be more now. That was what doesn't matter. Something around that. The problem with that is the amount of people who see me and are trolls and want to hate on my content, because it is very easy to sit behind an anonymous keyboard and spatter anything you want to say. You want to know how many people meet me in person and then say hate comments to my face? 0. I also have a swift right hook. I am a very good MMA fighter and boxer and kickboxer, and this list is very long. Anyway, it's part of the problem. People hate on you because they can, and it's very easy, and there's no consequence for them. And so those are 2 examples of the types of problems I have today. And let's get back to the rat race, right? Do I play in a rat race today? Maybe I do, but it does not feel like anything like what I felt in New York City, and traveling back there made it all come back, made it all feel, wow, I remember this. I remember how this felt to be in this rat race, to give a crap about, sorry, what do you do? Oh, who do you work for? Yeah, I know someone who works there. They blah, 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 title, name drop, name drop, name drop. Like that was my old life. Now, how do I define success for myself? Let me tell you, because this is something I've become very intentional about. My success is based off of how much love and how much freedom I have in my life. You want to know how much love I have? A lot. How much time I spend on the relationships I really care about? A lot. I spend a lot of time there. And I spend a lot of time trying to connect with the people I love the most. I keep them very close. And how much freedom do I have? Oh man, like let's go back to that job I was telling you about with that startup I was with. Wow, I had so many amazing perks. I never paid for meals. I got free rides home. Like all the things, got sewing classes, got free boot camp classes. Like the soft benefits were amazing. And you want to know what else was one of those benefits? Free therapy. You want to know why there was free therapy? Because a lot of people were super depressed. And you know what? One of the conference rooms, this conference room was fire. It had this view of Manhattan that, oh, it was so good. You could see the most amazing sunsets from there. It was like the perfect view everyone wished they had. And you know what that conference room was called? The crying room. You want to know why it was called the crying room? Because a lot of people, because it was New York City and that was the environment, would get cussed out at work for doing a bad job or get fired on the spot or whatever it was. Like, I saw some mean things go down in that office. You want to see papers being thrown in your face for not putting together a good enough Excel workbook? Oh yeah, I've seen that. I've felt that literally in my face. You know what? Did that feel successful back then? No. Did that feel like freedom? Having that kind of pay. The pay I had in that job was phenomenal. It afforded me a very cushy New York City lifestyle. But did I actually enjoy that New York City lifestyle? No, I did not have freedom. I did not feel like I was a free person at that time. Now, today's Wednesday, February 8th. You want to know what I did today? I booked an Airbnb and some hockey tickets. And, tickets to the club for tomorrow, Thursday, February 9th. Because, I don't know, it's Thursday. What am I doing tomorrow? I don't know. Let's go travel a little bit. Let's go take a couple hour ride. Let's go see some hockey. Go out to the nightclub. Oh yeah, let's go stop at that favorite happy hour place I love. I just remembered that. I should write that down. Anyway, that, my friends, feels like freedom to me. Like, I am very spontaneous in my life right now. I was just looking up last minute cruises because I was like, oh man, the weather is so good. I wonder if there's a cruise going out in the next couple weeks, and maybe I can convince my parents to come fly out here and come on a cruise with me because the weather's really nice. Let's go to the Caribbean or the Bahamas, or just Mexico, or anywhere. All right, that is too much. I am totally diverging on this. All right, how I define success: love and freedom, right? How much laughter do I have in a day? If I don't go a day in which I don't laugh so hard I cry with Meatball, like, he is so funny. The amount of fun we have in our relationship is amazing. Like, if I'm not using tissues to wipe tears from my eyes from laughing so hard, like, it's an odd day. Am I learning? Am I growing? And stay tuned for a future upcoming episode that I'm about to film with Mike from Travel with Meaning podcast, in which we are talking about traveling with intention and my morning routine that helps me to focus daily on small ways to focus on growth and learning. If every day I'm not growing and learning, if every day I'm not laughing so hard I'm crying, if every day I'm not feeling love and freedom, that is my current rat race. I'm okay with the definition of how that is. Do I care what brand of yoga pants I'm putting on? Not really. Yeah, they happen to be Lululemons, but that's because I freaking love that brand. And then fill in the blank with all the other things, right? Like, what kind of car do you drive? What kind of watch you wearing? Like, I don't care anymore. It's just not important to me. So ask yourself, right? Ask yourself, how are you defining success on your own terms? Are you in the rat race? And if you are, how can you make an exit in a way that feels good for you? Mine was pretty prompt. I just left New York City. I went back to San Francisco, and then I just left again because I was over it. Not everyone can be that black and white, but where in the gray area can you play? What's one step that you can take towards getting out of the rat race that maybe you don't even want to be playing in the first place, and redefine what that race should be for you, because it is your life and you only have one shot at the life you're living right now. Ooh. Question: are you a badass? In this moment, do it. Do the things that you need to do to get to the next part of your life so that you can be a little bit more badass and live the life that you really want. If you got some value out of this, don't forget to leave a positive review. Connect with me. I'm Christine Lozada everywhere. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Go forth, be badass, and I'll see you in the next adventure. Ciao.